All right, Melissa, so glad to have you today.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Yes. So, you are a Seattle based parent coach, a speaker, and author, created child-proof parenting online courses for your
Yes.
clients, and Grow Parenting and Mommy Matters.
Yes.
I like the alliteration there. And you're creating healthy tools for parents to raise healthy kids. That's basically
Yeah.
what you do, and
That
you're very
that
passionate about that.
that is my goal. That is my goal.
Yes. So I'm so glad that you're here on Creative Family Solutions, because right now parents are in need of some creative solutions in this time at home. Keeping kids
Absolutely.
productive and thriving. So I know we were kind of talking about keeping your kids healthy starts with the parents, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And how you communicate with each other. Can you kind of expand on that as your parents are modeling right now?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we're in a very unique situation right now, spending a lot of time with our kids, which is requiring a lot of our time and energy. Even though we're still juggling work, we're still juggling family life, and now we're juggling our kids' education as well.
Yeah.
And I think many times, because our energy and attention often goes to who's screaming the loudest, or what feels most urgent, we often tend to forget about ourselves and the importance of creating and maintaining that solid foundation in our relationships with our partners and parenting. And so I think a big piece of what you and I were talking about was the importance of how we're communicating with our partners, not just because communication is important in our relationship, but also because we're modeling that for our kids as well. They are watching everything we say and do and how we're saying things. So I think it's kind of a win-win. We're really intentional about how we express how we're feeling and what we need. And I think those two things right now are really, really important. We need to be open about how we're feeling, even when we're really not happy. How we express that's key, because our kids are feeling very much the same way. They're frustrated, they're anxious, they're depressed, um, a whole gamut of things. So our kids are learning from us. Yes, they don't have their daily teachers in their lives, but we are very much their teachers as well. And I think there's a lot of good that can come out of this period of time where we have all of this condensed family time that we didn't necessarily anticipate.
No, no, and I mean everyone's adapting right now, and everyone is uh, dealing with communication for
Yes.
sure because everyone's around each other 24/7, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
communication is just it's right it's there right in front of you.
Right.
Really escape it because everyone in your house has to deal with each other.
Right, right. And it's the very basics, and we don't really necessarily think about it because we have to do it all day long with one another. But I think kind of two things that I've been talking about a lot with parents as of recent is, number one, just being mindful of how we make requests. And that when we are very clear and specific, things are more likely to happen and our needs are more likely to be met when we're clear and specific. When we say things like, "Ugh, this garbage is so full," or "it's starting to really smell," there's usually a need under that. And the need is for whoever's responsible to take that out. But it's much more unlikely that that's going to happen than if we say, "Hey, sweetie, thanks so much for taking the garbage out before dinner tonight," right? So I think one piece of our communication is just being mindful of being very clear and specific with our partners and our kids.
Yeah.
One thing that I was talking with a family about yesterday that I coach online now, we usually meet in person, but we're working online,
Yes.
is that many parents ask kids to do things in the form of a question or a favor. We say like, "Hey, can you," go back to the garbage. "Hey, can you take the garbage out right now?" "No, I'm busy." right? And most parents don't really like that answer. But when we ask that way, we're asking if they'll do it, not asking them to do it.
Yeah.
Right. So there's an easy way, one kind of idea to get around that open-ended, hey, could you do this or do me a favor, is to kind of bookend those requests with a please and a thank you. So it models for our kids respectful ways of communicating, but it also communicates that it's not an option.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, do you feel like doing it? No, it's, sweetie, please take out the garbage right now. Thank you so much. So it's not debatable, and we're doing it in a very respectful way. And for some parents, it sounds something like, hey, thanks so much for taking out the garbage right now. Right. So it's, once again, it's not left open-ended. Will you do this? And many times with other people, will sugarcoat it or leave it open. Like, other people don't have to do what we need for them to do, but our kids do, because they're members of the family, and we all need to participate as responsible members of the family. So sometimes we're like, hey, could you do me a favor? Or would you mind, making your bed before you come down this morning? And I think we just have to be careful about what we're communicating when we ask that way, and just being mindful that that's how we're putting it out, and we can expect a no, or I don't feel like it, or I don't want to in those moments. So lots of little tweaks to the way we communicate and the way we ask things, I think, will make a really big difference for families at home. So number one, when we're asking, we are not asking in the form of a question or a favor. And that when we do make the request, we're very specific about it. We're not just, making these kind of putting hints out or expecting our partners to be mind readers when we make very unclear, what Dr. Gottman calls bids. And I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Gottman's work. He's a world famous researcher on couple relationships and emotion coaching, and I'm trained in his work, but I draw a lot from him in talking about couple relationships. So I just wanted to kind of share, because we were talking about communication, like,
yes,
a few just little tweaks that we can make that I think will make a really big difference.
Right.
One other thing I'd love to share that I think applies to both our partners and our children, I think that helps, is being mindful of how we're making those requests physically. So we're all juggling a lot right now, like work and family is happening all at the same time. And many times we're communicating from room to room, or with our back turned because we're trying to multitask. And that doesn't necessarily end up resulting in the results that we want, because it's very easy to ignore somebody yelling from another room. It doesn't feel respectful, and it doesn't feel important. So one thing that we can do and be more intentional about is actually going over, especially to our kids, getting down on their level and making eye contact, because many times we're in this power position, we're looking down on them, and we forget what that feels like, but it feels much more connected when we're actually making eye contact. And when we place a hand for contact on their shoulder, on their leg, on their arm, just that physical connection makes a big difference. So when we go over and say, thank you so much for putting all the books away from last night, they're going to hear that, and they're going to be much more likely to follow through and do those things, because we took the time to connect. And I know a lot of parents will normally respond to that suggestion by saying, like, I don't have time to do that. And the reality is, repeating ourselves 5 times or screaming from the other room a few times is going to take a lot more time and energy than making that initial investment. And it's actually going to get done.
Right.
And I think on the flip side, on the parent side of this, noticing that when we are doing that, when we're not making the connection and making a request, we tend to get frustrated. Things tend to get a little more intense. So it goes from like, hey, can you put the books away, please? To like, you know what? Could you please put the books away? I've asked 5 times, right? Like things escalate, right? Things escalate. And I think one way to avoid that escalation is just take ownership in how I'm choosing to make the request.
Right.
So I know me personally, I'm still guilty of like yelling something from upstairs when my kids are downstairs, but I don't expect anything to happen and I don't get frustrated. And I hear myself usually that first time and realize like, okay, what am I doing? And just take responsibility for them not doing anything because I didn't take the time to go over and connect and make that request.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that can make a really big difference with our kids, but also our partners, because many of us are focused on something. And, you know, if you and I, Jessica, were on the computer talking and somebody asked me to come in and do something, I'd probably be tuning them out, or I'd just be so involved in our conversation that I wouldn't hear it. So just noticing that many times, you know, we are hyper focused, and if we don't make that connection with our partner, then, you know, we're not going to hear each other either as well.
Right. And the kids pick up on that. And so
completely.
You have your own kids. How old
I
are
do.
they?
Yes, I have a 15 and a 13-year-old. And so I've had lots of practice. I still screw up. Like I said, I still catch myself yelling from room to room at times.
Yeah, and it's interesting because this is almost like a unique opportunity that we've never had before to slow down. You know how you were saying most parents like, I don't have the time to whatever it is.
Go over, yeah.
Well, now we're all in our house 24/7.
Right.
Groceries or something. So it's kind of a unique time right now to work on this. But what I love telling people is, as I'm talking to all these coaches who are telling a lot of tips, is like, there is grace too, right?
Completely. Absolutely.
Right? It's like, okay, we're not perfect. And I don't have kids myself. So one day, I mean, this series I think is going to make me an expert. No, I can't be an expert until I experience it. But I'm just even thinking just with my relationships, with roommates, you know.
Right. Absolutely. Oh,
you
this
know.
applies to everybody. And, you know, I talk about partners and parenting, and our partners are not necessarily just spouses or boyfriends or girlfriends. They're our parents, they're the nannies, they're teachers. Like, we're all partners in parenting, and everybody has a different set of partners. So I think everything that we're talking about applies to all relationships. It may look a little different, it might sound a little different, but I think it applies to all relationships for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I've heard, obviously, that parenting does teach you a lot.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Absolutely. But you know, Jessica, you work with children in the music world. And so you can apply all of these things with the kids that you work with as well. So I think you have a very fortunate opportunity to like practice before you actually have to apply it. And you know, it's funny because I work with a lot of teachers and therapists and doctors, and they all, you know, they usually will come to me and say, you know, like, I'm a doctor, I'm a therapist, like I should know what to do. And this is totally a different ball game. I mean, I worked with children for years and years before I had my own, and having your own is just a whole different ball game. Those buttons, those emotional buttons do not exist with other people's children like they do with your own.
That's what I'm finding.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yes, they do make you a much better human being, and you learn so much about just being human and about ourselves from parenting, for
Absolutely.
sure.
Yeah, and you know, I do feel fortunate to be able to work with people's children. I mean, sometimes I'm just like, I feel so blessed and that I get to work with these kids, and I'm not perfect. You know, I make mistakes as I teach people, you know, and then have had to go to kids and say, I apologize, I wasn't paying attention or listening, you know. You do that again.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful because kids, they have no pretense. It's kind of like, oh yeah, okay. and then
Right.
they kind of move forward with you. They're very honest.
Absolutely. And we don't actually realize, like, those are actually powerful moments for kids to see us making mistakes
Yeah.
and for us owning it, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of kids these days suffer with anxiety because they're not doing it right, or they messed up, or, you know, their grades aren't where they want them to be. And I think we need to teach children that mistakes are just opportunities for learning, and that we all
Yeah.
get to try again. It's okay.
Yeah.
So I think there's, you know, a lot of value in you making mistakes for your students.
Thank you.
They see that and normalize that, like, wow, you're the professional musician and you even mess up, right?
Right. Right.
Um, and I think that helps build resilient children as well, to
Right.
seeing that these mistakes are normal and they're great, and that how we approach them makes such a big difference. There are so many lessons to be learned all day long throughout our normal life. It doesn't have to be, you know, a specific like parenting moment where we're going to talk about this subject. It's
Okay.
how we conduct ourselves day to day that
Right.
is the most powerful form of teaching that we're doing with our
Right.
kids.
Absolutely. Yeah. And thank you for pointing that out. I think
Yeah.
it's beautiful when you have a parenting partnership with the teachers that you work with, and
Yes.
that they see you can make mistakes, and that's what I love to teach my kids is like it's not about you getting it perfect. It's how do
Right.
we build discipline, or how do we build on top of what we've learned before, and
Right.
that's a victory right there. And I love to celebrate just little victories with people.
Absolutely.
I'm sure as a parent you have to do that as well. Like, let's celebrate that we worked through this together, or whatever
Right.
it is.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. And I think joining in our kids' celebration is even more powerful than us celebrating for
Yes.
them or initiating, right? Like, wow, how did you figure out to, you know, complete that song? Tell me about how you did that, right? Those are very powerful ways to create space for kids to celebrate themselves,
Yes.
because we don't want them looking to us for validation. We
Yes.
want them to be validating themselves, and we need to create those spaces where they can do that.
Yeah.
And then we can enjoy and join them in their celebrations. Absolutely.
I love that. I was talking to someone else the other day about internal versus external motivation.
Yeah.
And as we're talking about being productive and thriving at home, I think this is a big topic. That
For sure.
internal motivation, like what does the kid feel like they can celebrate, um,
Right.
and feel proud of themselves, and then you come alongside and celebrate with them, is kind of what you were saying, right?
Yeah,
And,
absolutely. Yeah, because when it becomes about our celebration, it takes the joy out of the accomplishment for them.
yeah.
And then it just becomes about finding the next thing that, you know, I can get my mom or my teacher to celebrate.
Yeah.
It's not about the process or the fun I had, or, right, the hard work I did. It's really about continuing to get verbal praise ultimately.
Right.
And
Right.
we don't want that, like you were saying, that extrinsic motivation
Mhm.
to drive our children's behavior. Um, because we want them to feel passionate about their accomplishments,
Yes.
which will hopefully then drive them to do more.
Well, and that involves some listening skills, doesn't it?
It does, which
Yeah.
is so hard. And it's hard too when we're super excited about something they did. It's hard to not like throw the party and go crazy. But, you know, with the awareness, I think using a little constraint in those moments will go a long way. I have a story that I remember very visibly around this topic.
Yeah.
My daughter was like maybe 4 or 5 years old and was learning to tie her shoes. And we had been working on it for a long time. And one day we were trying to leave the house and she needed to tie her shoes. And of course I wanted to run in and do it really quick, but I just kind of like stepped back and said, okay, go ahead, give it a try. And magically it was that first moment where she did it, right? Like,
Wow.
and it didn't take 15 minutes. She did it in like 3 minutes. And like, I wanted to just like jump up in that moment. I was like, oh my God, she figured it out. It finally did it, right?
Yeah.
But I was aware of this intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation.
Yeah.
So I sat there and I just observed, and it was amazing. It was a magical moment where she like looked up at me and she's like, I did it. I did it. And she was just like so happy, and she started jumping up and down. And
Yeah.
then I got to join in her, and it was just like, it was so magical just to watch her face light up and turn towards me. And that was the moment where I could join her. And so I think there are lots of moments where we can stop ourselves and just like watch that rise in our children so we can join them. And kids know too, like when there's just kind of fake praise, there's lots of times you'll hear parents like, oh my God, what a beautiful drawing, look what you did. And kids are like, that was like not even that good, or like, I just did that really quick.
Yeah.
So kids kind of figure out like whatever, or if it's a constant praise, they're just like whatever, like it doesn't matter, I'm not that good, you always say that, right? So they kind of just blow it off. So I think being mindful about the type of feedback that we give is really, really important. And I think, like you said, sometimes it's just better to listen, to say nothing. We don't always have to respond to everything that our kids are doing, right? And it can be so much more powerful when we ask questions. And I think questions are probably one of the most powerful parenting tools there are. So like the example before, like, wow, how did you figure out how to complete the song? Or tell me about your process, right?
Yeah.
Is a great way to show them that I'm noticing, without like getting into the, I'm so proud of you, you're a brilliant musician, you're talented, you're right, all of that stuff that of course we think about our children, because our children are just perfect, they're like geniuses. No, they're not. We feel that way.
All my students are geniuses.
Of course. Well, it's because of your genius teaching, of course.
Okay.
But I think just being mindful of like those little opportunities are so key, right? So asking questions in moments where we want to give feedback, even the celebratory positive feedback, is so much more powerful. So these tiny bits and ways that we communicate just make a huge difference. And it builds our relationship and connection. We learn about our child. Maybe we thought they learned it some way and they did it a different way. So like, it's a great way to really just connect with our kids and learn about them and their process and what they're thinking too.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm learning a lot.
I'm sure you are.
I know our audience is going to appreciate what you just said. And I'm sure depending on how the parent was raised, how their parents raised them,
right.
We have different patterns that we have to look back on and then address for now. And again, there's grace in it,
Yes.
And we're not perfect. Just like for my teaching, I'm not, I'm still going to be learning.
Right.
And growing and just kind of developing. I think what a key thing of what you said was mindfulness and awareness. How can we develop our own mindfulness and awareness? And that goes with all relationships too.
Right.
Well,
and it takes a long time to shift because, like you said, our families of origin have a huge influence on how we show up in the world and our relationships. And we got to pick and choose how we communicate and how we raise our kids. And yes, you're going to hear your mother or father's voice coming out of your mouth at certain times. And then you get to decide whether or not that resonates and aligns with how you want to parent and make changes. So my role as a parent coach is to assist parents in finding ways to become the parent they want to be, but also create the connection and the relationship they want with their child. So a big piece is starting with that awareness of what am I doing and I'm saying, and what is that communicating, and how does that translate to their behavior. Like, what am I inviting in their behavior? By the way, I'm speaking to them. And how am I forming the relationship that I want with my child? So we just work on little tweaks, like some of the ideas that I shared with you today, just little tweaks, but these little tweaks are small, but do take a lot of effort and energy to implement, because we do have these habitual ways of showing up and communicating, primarily from the way we were raised. But with practice, they become second nature, and they become new ways of connecting and communicating as well.
I love the new.
Yeah.
and because mainly because that means growth.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I love. Okay, well, we're coming to the end of our interview here. I know, by the way, thank you so much for all the value you just offered and gave
Absolutely.
to us. Really appreciate it. And I know I learned a lot in this. And I can take forward and grow in the new. So you have a free gift for our audience to see if they want more information on all
Yeah.
the things that we covered.
Sure. Yeah. So one thing I wanted to make sure your audience had access to, especially during this time, is an email course that they can take for free that I offer on the Childproof Parenting site. It's called the Keep Calm course. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges parents have in tough moments with their kids and the big emotions and
Yeah.
challenging behaviors, is like, how do I stay calm, right? Because when we're not calm, we can't access our rational brain to do something that we want to do or say something that we feel like would be the appropriate thing. So I want to make sure they have access to that. So if they go to childproofparenting.com, they'll come to a page, and I have a button right there that they can click on and sign up for that course. And they'll get one email a day that reinforces this skill that will allow you to regulate your emotions, connect with your child, and ideally avoid these big moments, but also help your child calm down a whole lot faster. So I wanted to make that available to everybody that's viewing today. So it's called the Keep Calm course on the Childproof Parenting site. But I also wanted to top that and offer everybody in the Creative Family Solutions Summit the option to get on a coaching call with me for half off. So if they mention Creative Family Solutions, they'll get half off their first coaching session, or if they choose, they can apply it to their first coaching package. So they just need to reach out to me directly, which they can find me on Childproof Parenting, or they can email me at melissa@benaroya.net or melissa@childproofparenting.com. Either way, and just let me know, and I can talk to them. I also offer a free 20-minute consult call. So if they're wondering if coaching might be the right thing for them, I'm happy to get on the phone and chat with them about what's going on. And if I'm not the right person, point them in the right direction, or offer them some resources that might help them in their challenge or in the place that they're at that moment.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Melissa. I definitely urge everyone to take advantage of the wealth of knowledge we have right in front of us. And I learned a lot. So, and I'm going to take it forward in my teaching. And I'm so glad that you could be on with us today.
Thank you,
Really
Jessica.
appreciate you. Yes, your family stay healthy and safe in this time.
Thank you. You do the same, please.
Yes, and have a great day, rest of the day.
What is today anyways, right?
The quarantine, but I mean, it sounds funny. I mean, have a safe, beautiful time with your beautiful family.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was nice spending time with you, Jessica.
Thank you, Melissa. Take care.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.